Not too long ago, Avowed finally broke its radio silence regarding the game, showing something on Twitter, and it wasn't much, to be perfectly honest. It was a very, very, very brief video with some gameplay and some instances of the character creator, as well as some minor encouragement to buy the game. And that was about it. And frankly speaking, I have a lot to say about Avowed. As many of you might know, before certain things happened, shall we say, I was heavily invested in this game. I really, really wanted to see what was going on in this game because I am a huge fan of the Pillars of Eternity universe, and the lore, and the story, and just the world in general. It's one of my favorite settings out there, period, full stop. So, of course, I was invested in the idea of a continuation of that universe and setting. It's perfectly normal and logical. But a lot of things happen. Now, one thing you might notice is that Avowed recently has not been marketing very much. In fact, they haven't been marketing at all. In fact, as I just stated prior, they have effectively done zero marketing. But I want to point something out here. Even before there was no marketing for this game, there was still no marketing. I remember many conversations I had with a close friend of mine who's also very invested in the Pillars of Eternity universe, and we both were remarking half a year ago, 7 months ago, that Avowed's marketing is pretty poor. As in, they're not doing very much to promote the game, and most people don't know about the game, and even if it's a really good game that might attract a new audience, a new public that is not aware of the Pillars universe, they're not doing a great job of promoting that. So this issue goes back a while when it comes to the marketing. For whatever reason, the marketing for this game has been piss poor to non-existent. And the people that they get on board to talk about the game, in the first instance, was Carrie Patel, the director of the game, who, by the way, I think is a very competent person when it comes to her job. But she's not really the marketing type. She talks about certain things, she's very calm, she's very pleasant to engage with as a person, but she's not a marketing person. And so you had a bunch of developers talking about the game and how cool it is, but they really weren't communicating the coolness factor to the audience very well. That was the first issue. Then there were complaints of gameplay jank, which Obsidian apparently worked on and improved on, by all accounts, based on people having played the game at least a couple of hours in some cases. And then there was another big issue, the price point. 70 euros, or USD if you happen to live in Freedom Land, for this game, which seems a tad bit overpriced, all things considered. I think 60 euros would be a much more justified price for the game, but it turns out it's very likely that Microsoft probably wants this game to be played primarily on Game Pass. It seems to be the case. We can only speculate, but it seems to be the case. So who knows? So you had bad marketing to non-existent marketing. You had a very high price point for this rather obscure game. And then towards the end of last year, as many of you know, we had a Twitter outburst by none other than one Matt Hansen, the art director for Avowed, who went on a tirade or multiple tirades in a way that was very, very inappropriate for a professional, and above all for a professional game developer whose position is art director at a company. I'm not going to go into the details, but let's just put it this way. Matt Hansen likes to, quote-unquote, own the chuds. And that came about as a result of, for some reason, the revelation that there are pronouns in the character creator of Avowed, which is a bit surprising, all things considered, because they seem to be a later addition to the game. Previous renditions of the game that we looked at in the character creator had nothing about pronouns. So it seems like they were kind of jammed in there for some reason, most likely for a political reason, and unsurprisingly, the usual crowd picked up on this. Now, mind you, the usual crowd had absolutely no interest in this game, because, as I said, Avowed, like it or not, is an obscure niche game in an obscure niche universe, the Pillars of Eternity universe Aora. But they picked up on this, and like sharks drawn to blood, they went for the jugular, so to speak. And they talked about this extensively, and as a result of this, Matt Hansen went live on Twitter and lost his mind and insulted a bunch of people and acted in the inappropriate manner that I just described. And ever since then, there's been radio silence until now, until recently, with a little bit of video footage and some instances of the character creator, albeit without pronouns. Now, there's a lot to be said about Avowed, and I feel like it's appropriate I talk about it because I was heavily invested in this game years ago. The game started with this instance of a dark trailer that looked very cool. It was a cinematic, but nonetheless looked very cool. This idea of returning to the dark tones of the original Pillars of Eternity game seemed to be very much on display in this trailer. And then, a couple years later, instead of the dark, epic tone we got in that original trailer, instead we got kind of fruity, Fruit Loops, colorful something something. It looked very reminiscent, very similar to the Outer Worlds. And let me say at the outset that I'm inclined to think, I have no proof or evidence, this is my speculation, but I think it is educated speculation, that Matt Hansen, in no small part, the art director, who went on a lunatic tirade on Twitter, was responsible for the shift in art direction. Even if Avowed had been a smaller game, not as epic, not as open world as many people had speculated and hoped for, a la Skyrim or what have you, I still think that the tone of the game, the atmosphere, the art assets, all these things could have been darker, grimmer, and conveyed a different message. And I think that Matt Hansen is probably responsible for shifting the gears and pushing Avowed in a very colorful, fruity direction that tends to take away from the seriousness, potentially, of this game. Which is not to say that the game isn't serious or couldn't be serious. It's just that when you have these very bright, bombastic colors, and the color palette is always in your face, it's a little hard to take the game seriously in terms of the dark tone and tenor. It still could be that way. There could be places in the game that are like that, who knows? But I strongly suspect that he was responsible for that in large measure. He is the art director at the end of the day. And the game just looked a lot different than what we had expected, and a lot of people were disappointed. But me, and my boundless optimism, no, it's not really optimism, but my interest in the setting, Aora, thought, okay, it doesn't look amazing, but maybe they'll still tell a cool story, maybe they'll still show us cool combat. It will just be a different type of game. Even if it's like Outer Worlds doesn't look terrible, so I guess I can live with that kind of thing. They showed the combat and improved on it, and they showed the skill system, which is this weird mesh of different skills from Pillars of Eternity 2 rolled into one. So you don't play a class, but basically you play as you want, and you choose the skills you want. Almost certainly due to budget limitations, I suspect, but they made the best of it. But there are a couple of things at play here that I really want to address. A bunch of people think that Matt Hansen's tirade and his loss of sanity on Twitter has nothing to do with the radio silence, nothing to do with the lack of marketing. It's just something that happened and nobody cares about that. That's not true. Games need marketing. A lot of people are operating under the false notion, I think, that if a game is good, it'll sell itself just like that. People cite Baldur's Gate 3. That's not really the case. Baldur's Gate 3 had very strategic, very well-placed marketing. You had multiple panels from hell during the development. You had the bear scene. You had a lot of things that drove the public towards the game independent of the high quality of the game. So this idea in 2025 that you don't need marketing for a game is ludicrous. Let's just set that aside. But like it or not, people do take these political insults, this political aggression on the part of developers seriously. It's not professional. He should have shut his mouth and said nothing. You know, on YouTube, there's a woman named Laura Fryer, who's a well-known developer. She worked on Gears of War, among other games, and she's left a number of comments and made a couple of videos on this very topic, and she stresses the importance of professionalism. That is your job as a professional anywhere, to not resort to childish outbursts, to not fall prey to your base human instincts, your lack of self-control, your anger issues. They needed to do that, and he didn't. And in response, by the way, there were leaks on this. Fergus Urquhart, the CEO of Obsidian, told him and his entire crew just to lie low. Don't say anything, let it blow over. Now, that's not a bad tactic in and of itself. You don't want to draw more attention to yourself. But it is also a problem because it means the game is getting even less attention than it did before. Before Matt Hansen had his outburst, where the marketing was, as I mentioned multiple times, piss poor to begin with. So you're sort of stuck between a rock and a hard place. I think in this instance, it would have been a better move for Obsidian to come out and apologize and tell the public that Matt Hansen does not represent the company as a whole, to force Matt Hansen to apologize upon pain of being fired, and to simply remove the pronouns from the game and tell everyone that this is going to be a fun, interesting game and you're going to love it and has nothing to do with politics. I think that would have been the appropriate move in light of the events that occurred. But that didn't happen, and now they're basically screwed. We have about 3 weeks, lords and ladies, until the release of Avowed. And I'm not going to lie, I still have some vague interest in the game. I love the setting of Pillars of Eternity, or it's great. I think the ideas, the stories, the cosmology, it's all just fascinating. And I very much wanted to see the aftermath of Pillars of Eternity 2 in some game, which it turns out is Avowed, because there are things that are highly indicative that this game is going to reprise a lot of these issues and talk about them directly. But I've been disappointed in the poor marketing, and I've been extremely disappointed in what happened with Matt Hansen, the fact that he did that in the first place, the attack on the so-called Chuds, which is basically an attack on working-class white men as a whole, and also the fact that Obsidian did absolutely nothing to correct his behavior and told everyone just to lie low and effectively wait for it to blow over. Like I said, a very corporate move, but not a great move in this instance. Things these days in games are hyper supercharged. Like it or not, things have become very politicized, and any little thing that can stoke the flames of this already very overt political climate in gaming is going to stoke those flames. In fact, it's going to turn into a massive conflagration, if you get what I mean. And those are the circumstances, and that's the environment that we're currently operating in. And as a consequence, you need to handle these things carefully. And Obsidian has not. People, whether other people like it or not, don't like the inclusion of pronouns in video games. There are a lot of reasons for this. Mostly it's political. My reasons are less political, more to do with just an understanding of how human language works. I have a background in linguistics. That's not how pronouns work in human language. It's very artificial, but that's a separate topic. I've considered making a video about that just to explain the reasoning and the science behind it, but neither here nor there. The fact of the matter is, people don't like pronouns in games. Most people don't like politics being shoved in their faces, rammed down their throats, as is evidenced by the abysmal sales of Dragon Age The Veilguard, which was an overtly political game of extremely poor quality in every other area. So that's the world we live in right now. And for somebody like Matt Hansen to come on Twitter and do what he did, well, let's not pretend that that did not damage the potential of sales. Even without him, this game would have been a game that was very obscure with the poor marketing, that some people might have bought, maybe not, but let us not pretend that he did not detract from the potential sales, that his actions had no consequences. Whether some people like it or not, we are living right now in a period of overcorrection, where the slightest whiff of so-called wokeness will incense the mob, and the corresponding channels on YouTube will smell the blood in the water and they will go after it. And if you want to blame these people, if you want to blame the Endymions of the world or the Smash JTs, go right ahead. They are a symptom of a problem. They are not the problem themselves. The problem is, whether you like it or not, the insistence of injecting real-life, modern, in-your-face, over-the-top politics and political issues into games when people just want to have fun, immersive games that aid them in their escapism. They don't want games that remind them of real life. They don't want games that remind them of the crappy politics they have to deal with in real life. And they don't want other people's politics that they might disagree with being shoved down their throats. They just want fun, immersive experiences, and they want to escape. Because I bet a lot of those people have jobs that they don't like, lives that they're not too content with, and gaming is the best option for them to escape from their misery. And then what do? You inject all these stupid real-world politics in the games, and they cannot escape in any capacity. So, yeah, people like JT Smash Dr. Disaster, Endymion, the list is long. They are a symptom of the cause, and they are riding the wave. But make no mistake, it was progressives and progressive politics and people being hired that were not particularly competent who prioritized political agendas that were causal in this and drove people to the ends they're currently in. So, you want to get mad and angry at these people on YouTube who make non-stop anti-woke content, the solution is incredibly simple. Just make fun, immersive games that have no politics in them. Remove the pronouns, stop talking about non-binary, trans, just make fun games that people enjoy, whose story is compelling, whose mechanics and combat are fun. And there you have it. Channels like Dr. Disaster and Endymion will not survive because everything they do, every video they put out, is predicated on outrage. And the recent situation with Kingdom Come Deliverance 2, with this nothing burger that you can spend the entire game with, hundreds of hours potentially, and never even encounter, that is symbolic of that. Because we are right now, I believe, in a correction, an overcorrection, if you will. But over time, woke content will disappear from games because it doesn't sell. It ruins companies. It makes games sell worse. Now, I know I'm going to hear the argument that it's not the wokeness, it's not the politics, the games are just bad. Give me a bloody single instance of a game that was really good, that was overtly political, and please don't say Baldur's Gate 3. Please don't say Baldur's Gate 3. Because yes, there's certain things there. There's a gay couple. There are very hard to see pronouns in the game. But there is zero political messaging. They don't preach to you about it. There's none of that in that game. And apart from that, almost every instance of these overtly woke political games is of poor quality. It's just a fact. And this is because, I believe this very strongly, that people who believe that politics are more important than fun and games are fundamentally, at root, incompetent in their ability to produce fun games. They think political messaging is more important, and they think that is going to carry the game for them because they're so convinced of their own belief system, of their own virtues, that somehow, akin to iron ore being transmuted into gold via alchemy, they're going to convince the public of this too. But guess what? The public cares about fun and immersive games, and we just want to escape. That's what I want to do when I play games. I want to have fun, I want to be enthralled by the story, I want to have fun with the combat, and I want to escape. And I am speaking for many, even the vast majority of people out there. The people who produce these games that are high on their politics are not competent. If they were, they would still make good games, and we have not seen a single instance of that. So please don't give me that BS about Dragon Age, the Veilguard, just being a bad game which had nothing to do with the politics, when you had that screaming brat, Tosh, non-stop in your face about they, them, trans, this, that, blah, 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 and now you can pull a barb. These were activists who were incompetent at making a game good in terms of the traditional qualities of making a game good, and that is why the game failed. Political activists are almost certainly, as a rule, not skilled or competent game developers, and it goes hand in hand. The correlation is so strong. Just look at the world. Concord, Dustborn. Don't give me that BS that overt, heavy-handed political activism has nothing to do with poor quality in games. It absolutely does, because they have no idea how to deliver the message, because they suck, they're incompetent, and they have no idea how to make good games. So, back to Avowed. I think that Avowed still technically could be a good game. I think the writing still could be good. The character creator doesn't look amazing, it looks okay. But Obsidian was never really known for their character creators, so it's not really that big a deal to me. It's serviceable, it looks serviceable. But we better pray to the gods that they've either removed the pronouns or they haven't included other things. Because remember one of the ridiculous tweets that Matt Hansen made on how there's going to be even more of the pronoun-related stuff in the game, even more woke content. Let's hope not. Because this game was never slated to sell well, and part of this is the fault of Microsoft. Microsoft has done a piss-poor job at marketing the game, of investing time, money, and energy into making sure people are aware of Avowed, but rest assured, the lion's share of the fault lies squarely and strictly in the hands of Obsidian, and specifically Matt Hansen. This should be a lesson to everyone. And right now, in this current moment in time, we are at the beginning of an industry-wide correction. This woke stuff, the politics, it is going to lose. It doesn't sell because the people who make these types of games suck at what they do. They don't know how to make good games. And that is the future. It's going to take a while, this correction. Thank the gods the correction is finally happening, but it will. And guess what? Everyone is going to benefit from this. If you don't like content creators like Endymion, Dr. Disaster, Smash JT, Hypnotic, they're going to disappear. They're not going to get the views they used to get because they're going to be hunting after phantasms and nothing burgers continuously as the wokeness shrivels and shrinks and ceases to be there altogether. And then we're just going to have games that exist on their own merits, whether they're good or bad, and we're just going to be talking about games. And believe me, lords and ladies, I long for that time. I cannot wait to just talk about games and the quality of games and what I like about games. Not this political BS. I'm sick and tired of it. But until that crap is gone and jettisoned from modern gaming, we will have to talk about it to varying degrees. But it will in time evaporate. Thank the gods. And we can look forward to that. So, I'm still vaguely interested in Avowed. I don't really want to support somebody like Matt Hansen. I don't really want to support even a company like Obsidian because through their lie low and just let it blow over tactic, they're telling me that they tacitly support the actions and words of Matt Hansen. And frankly speaking, I don't want to support that. But let's see what happens. Anyway, as always, if you like my content and you like my takes, you can leave a like, comment, share, and subscribe. It's much appreciated. Until the next time, take care. I'll check you out then.